Okay, this is just a very short video about some of the issues to do with databases. Here we'll see a file in Excel which contains a load of information. And this was called from a Word document presented by Alan. So I mean, he'd obviously got his data and put it into a Word document anyway, and so I deconstructed this and put it into a database. So here we've got a unique name for a village. It's northing and easting, or latitude and longitude. The village name, a little description of it, some numbers. I think that's potentially of livestock. Water source, and number of other numeric elements there which you can sort out about later on. It's not really that important. And then the tribes that are associated with it. Now this wasn't immediately useful for me to do stuff with. For example, this one village here has 3 tribes associated with it. Fine. Now I can search those in Excel, but it's actually a little bit more difficult to do in a database. We'll see that the latitude and longitude here are conflated into one single field. That's not actually very useful if you want to plot it as an X and a Y inside a GIS, which is something we did actually want to do, and compare and contrast of the digitized data that I'd done from the aerial photography with some of the site visits. You'll also find out that, where are we? Yeah. Some of these villages have toponyms, multiple names for the same place, and are all stored in here. So essentially, I needed to find ways to actually clean this up a little bit to stick it into a database. And this is kind of instructive because it pulls in a number of the general issues and techniques that you see in a lot of databases, such as information conflation here and here, and some naming instance issues. So if we look at the database that I generated, and we can have a look at the relations from here too. So database tools, and have a look at the relationships. You will see that when I add the last table in, let's have a look at, what did I call it? Yes. Now the major point of this was to, I don't want to do that twice. It's here. Right table. Right, here we are. Was to generate a spatial table, a spatial database, which we've talked about earlier on, which I've done here, but I've also linked it through to the course data that came from the Excel sheet. So it's preferred name, description, cultivated Fedan, so that's one of the numeric fields, irrigation source, shoats, households, and population. You'll notice here that there's no information on tribe, and there's only one name for preferred name. So if we have a look at the village T table here, you can see it's a long list. It looks quite like the Excel sheet, but it's actually one thing for one record for each instance. So we've done something with the toponyms. Okay, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But there's also no tribe there. So if we go back to relationships here, we'll find that there's a subtable called toponyms, and we've linked them through by their unique reference, and we have a toponym ID which refers now to the alternative name. So if we look at the toponyms, we can see here that only 3 of the villages have toponyms at the moment. And if we now go back to our relationships, now have a look at what we did with the tribes. Now the tribes become a little bit more different. We can do exactly the same thing with the tribes if we wanted to, as we did with the toponyms, which is just to have a subtable for the toponyms. And so we could have had the village ID and then the tribe name. However, tribes is actually probably a table in its own right. So what I've done is I've generated a tribe table, which we can look at here. So this is the list of all of the tribes. I mean, as you can see, we've got them in a unique sequence, and it looks like there's been a typo error here. So this is something that I need to send back and say to somebody, look, there's a Gusiani and a Gusiini. Now, does that actually exist in actuality, or do we have a typo here? If we've got a typo, let's resolve it and throw the whole thing back into our analysis, because ultimately we should have unique tribal names, and that they may not be unique globally, but they will be unique regionally. And an issue here of Wahhabi and Wahhabi. So do we have semantic variations in the way that these are constructed here? So we have our tribe table, and then we have this junction table, which says that SRN1, which is the ID for the village, has 3 different tribes living in it, which has the tribe ID 9, 11 and 13. Now we can find out what they are by linking through to the pulling an appropriate query to look at each of the data sets. So here we have again, get back to our relationships. You see that we've actually taken that one Excel table and created what is referred to as a normalized data structure, and that allows us to run a lot more complicated queries against this data to answer a whole range of questions that we couldn't have done using the original data structure. You'll also see here that I have quite explicit field names, so it's very explicit about what they mean. I also have a naming structure for dealing with tables, subtables. So this is villages spatial, this is a village table, so this is all the attributes for that village. But we also have a subtable. So the village table has a subtable called toponyms. Here we've got a junction table where we have a junction between village and tribe. Now the point of a junction is to represent what's referred to as a many-to-many relationship. So here there are many villages that can have a relationship with many tribes. And a junction table is how you represent that. For toponyms we have a one-to-many relationship. So one village can have many toponyms. And that's basically how I broke down that source data and rebuilt it into a more structured relational database format. Okay. Oh, actually here you are. Let's look originally. And this, just to refresh your memory, is how the source data looked. Okay. Thank you.